Yeah.
Well, how did you guys kind of I imagine it was kind of an evolution process or iterative process in terms of, getting to, this final deco. I mean, I imagine this is taking you places where you hadn't gone before as far as paintwork goes, right?
Yeah, and that's been the hardest part. Not so much developing the paint proper,
Hmm.
it's how you construct action figures. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Our preferred method in doing all this stuff is that our joints in here are made of palm or
Hmm.
nylon, all the discs.
Yep.
So palm and the nylon have an inherent weep to them. So, which means that they're not completely inert, not in a damaging, crazy way, but just polypropylene, as an example, is a plastic that weeps.
Hmm.
It was first developed as an anti-graffiti plastic. You would be able to wipe it off easier
Wow.
because it's inherently, it's not sticky, but it feels slightly different. That weep is what allows tighter tension to move
Hmm.
easier. But because it's got the weep, you can't paint it.
Right.
So instead, you have to use a different material. And so your joint tolerances and what you can use are very different if you're using palm or nylon than if you're using what a lot of people use, which is polycarbonate.
Hmm.
Uh, and so so we have to paint all these discs. So then we have to use a polycarbonate disc. Polycarbonate doesn't isn't flexible.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't have a bend the same way. So you have to re-engineer your joints around polycarbonate. And if you don't treat polycarbonate right, that's when you get, I think, what you would traditionally, it's cheaper and easier, obviously. You get what you would traditionally have in an action figure where it's like, the joints can freeze up.
Yeah.
When they freeze up, that is because the tension is too tight. The polycarbonate has been painted, and so the gaps and all the engineering in between them are too tight.
Exposed. Yeah.
And then therefore, and it has no flexibility and it has no weep. The weep allows it to travel.
Hmm.
So then all of a sudden you're like, and that's what also gets to, oh, now it works, or it's snapped off and broke
Right.
because it's not a PVC, it's not an ABS, it's a polycarbonate to accept the paint. So in Silverhawks, we had to go away from using palm or nylon
Mm.
and use polycarbonate. But I want them to be stiff joints, but not breakable joints.
Right.
So it just, there's a lot longer worth of engineering and development and tool modifications to get those joints just right so that we can use PC without having it get stiff or break,
Right.
and not have it be like, oh, frozen joints when it shows up. Um,
N-
because you are layering basically PVC and polycarbonate with two layers of paint in between them and putting them together, and then dealing with joint tension that's usually higher than the material allows. And so PC being stiff also doesn't flex, it doesn't
right.
stretch. So, I'm sure there's plenty of people who go, lots of other people use PC all day long, and they do. They do. Uh, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Or they're doing die-in PC.
Hmm.
So it's not painted PC.
Right.
But painted PC is just a pain in the ass.